Sun and cloud up to 22. Right now, 14 at 99.9 The Bay.
4 minutes after 8 o'clock. Good morning, it's John. The day after what was a marathon city council meeting last night, and a lot to uncover from last night. Joining us this morning, Mayor Bill Mauro. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, John.
A long night for you. 12:30, I think, was the time where we said goodnight. It was an interesting meeting, to say the least, but I want to first start with something that happened last night that you acknowledged quite eloquently through the meeting, in that the flipped vote on the designated truck route from Councillor Brian Hamilton, who, in my opinion, showed an enormous amount of courage to give the speech that he did, as heartfelt and as genuine as it was, explaining why he flipped his vote and apologizing to the community and council. And you said to him quite clearly, there's nothing to apologize for. This is democracy.
Yeah, so a bit of a confusing process maybe for those who aren't following it closely, but the history is, one, we voted and there was a vote to implement a designated truck route at the ratification, which is the second process. The first vote won 7-6 to implement a truck route. The second vote to ratify that decision won 7-6, even though two councillors at the ratification changed their position. So what that did was put you in the position of drafting a bylaw. Normally bylaws pass as a matter of course. But we found ourselves in an odd circumstance where enough councillors were opposed to this. It's a contentious issue. It's a split council on this. Mm-hmm. And the bylaw was defeated once or twice. And last night, Councillor Hamilton, as you mentioned, changed his vote. So the bylaw was defeated 7-6. So it leaves us in a bit of a procedural quandary. But he did file, or rather he registered his intention last night to file a notice of motion at the July 20th meeting.
All right. So what this essentially means is that you're stuck, and the bylaw, although you have direction to administration to implement a bylaw, you do not have a bylaw yet. And so the problem is that this could keep coming back unless somebody else changes their mind. But it looks like that's not going to happen. Now, the notice to rescind requires a 9-3 vote, right?
It requires 9 votes to pass. That's correct.
So in order for that to pass, two people that are in favor of the designated truck route are going to have to change their mind. And I don't see that happening either. But one of the comments that was made last night, and I believe it was from Councillor Aiello, who was talking about how this is a time for council to show some leadership. Do you not think it would be a better idea at this point for somebody or those in favor of the designated truck route to vote to rescind it, to scrap it, and start all over again in 2 years when there's a new council?
Well, it's one option, John, for sure. If the 7 votes last night that were opposed to the bylaw, if there were 2 more people who are currently in favor of the truck route who voted in favor of rescinding it, then you would be likely in that position. To be fair to those councillors who want the designated truck route, they would make the argument that it only takes 1 more vote of someone who is opposed to implement the bylaw, and then it would be done and be in the rearview mirror as well. So you're right in terms of what you said, but the argument applies to both sides of this. And right. So it's just a situation that is difficult. To the community, it may seem a bit awkward, but I think we remind people that, this is an issue that not just the past council, but previous councils have been trying to find a way through for 10 or 15 years. Right. I don't even know how long. And so we've been wrestling it for a little better than a year. And I do believe eventually it will resolve itself. If not, July 20th is when he said he will file his notice of motion. That's non-debatable. The following week, July 27th, it will be debated. That's at the point in time when we'll find out if 2 who are in favor flip or who 1 that is opposed flip. And that would provide a clear path forward if that was to occur. If not, if it fails, then we're just back in the same situation that we are in now. To that point, there was a motion moved last night by Councillor Fraser looking for a report from legal on potential paths forward. To be clear, our procedural bylaw does not accommodate or account for this, John. That's how rare
Right.
it is, where you have enough votes who do not vote to implement a bylaw. There's nothing wrong or illegal about it. It's just a very, very rare, odd circumstance, and so it's created a bit of a quandary for us. But that's okay. It'll work itself out eventually.
Council voted in favor of Councillor Fraser's motion about going back to legal for some advice, but isn't the legal department going to give you the same advice that it gave you during that whole conflict of interest trouble that was a couple of months ago?
Well, I know those are separate issues, and I quite frankly, I'm not sure how much value there is in that motion that was moved last night. I did support it. I'll look to see what legal might be able to provide. There were really, in my opinion, when I listened to the motion from Councillor Fraser, there's two parts to it. One, dealing with the procedural bylaw as it exists, and two, is there something that perhaps our process is not being consistent with when it comes to the Municipal Act, which is provincial legislation.
Right.
So that would be the legal piece that he seems to think that maybe there is something there that we are not being consistent with. That's why I supported it. On the procedural bylaw piece, that is ultimately for council to change. And our procedural bylaw right now does not accommodate or hasn't predicted a situation where you would have 7 councillors not implementing a bylaw to implement a ratified decision.
All right, so this is gonna spin around for a while. Depending on what happens on July 27th, this could be going on for a long time. So, what this did do, though, Bill, is that it showed that there is a pretty significant divide on this issue, a very strong divide on this issue with councillors, and it also led to some pretty tense moments last night and in previous meetings about this. Are you concerned about this group now with this decision and the complexity of this decision not really getting to a chance to work well together over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, John. Last night, I was struggling with this a bit, and have for some time. As a mayor, I'm one vote. It's just the nature of our system in Ontario. I think, my process to this point, two years on or a year and a half on, is I do not phone councillors individually and lobby them on particular issues. I've had councillors tell me that I should be doing more of that they see that as the role of mayor. I think I may do a bit more of that going forward. But to your point, yeah, it is a little bit of a concern, but I think that generally, I think that there's enough experience around the council table that people just understand this is one of those very difficult issues. Beyond this issue, I would say, generally speaking, the tone and the tenor of the discussions at council have been fair and respectful. And I'm hopeful that, one issue like this won't create any long-term hardship amongst councillors individually. I really don't think it will. And it's just, as I said, it's like 10 or 15 years on this particular issue. And so what we're struggling with at this point is no different than what previous councils, 2 or 3, have tried to push forward.
11 minutes after 8 o'clock, Mayor Bill Mauro is our guest. Moving on from the DTR, let's talk about the services review quickly. We only got a couple of minutes left. Last night was for information purposes only. Councillor Johnson said something that got my attention, which I agree with. Her concern was, let's make sure that this very expensive report doesn't go on a shelf and we do nothing with it. Are you confident that there are some things in that report that are going to come back to you in September with some strong recommendations that council is going to be able to get behind to try to save us some money?
No, that's absolutely what shouldn't happen.
Okay.
Or eventually might happen, maybe would be more accurate for me to say. The city manager made some remarks before any councillor spoke last night, John.
Right. Yep.
And he referenced a conversation that I had with him yesterday morning about the report. And he did say that one of the suggestions I had made would ensure that it wouldn't just end up on a shelf. And so eventually I put that motion on the floor after allowing time for councillors to ask questions. To Councillor Johnson's point, I thought the city manager had addressed it in his opening comments, and my suggestion was that we establish a date 3 months hence, give or take, allows for the report to be posted publicly for the public to have an opportunity to review it, provide their own input. administration will bring back that data collated. Individual councillors can go out, they can talk to their own constituents and see how that feels. And at that meeting, as I constructed the motion, it would be for council to come back.
Right.
And detail what they want to see happen. So in that September meeting, councillors can bring back individual issues that they think should go forward or should not go forward. There will be work for administration, I think, in terms of the efficiencies part of this. Obviously, that's probably not something council can specifically define, but could provide direction for administration to continue. Remembering, John, that most of this, whatever savings, if any, result from the report, those savings would accrue into the 2021 budget cycle.
Right.
So there's 3 months' time here. Let's give it a sober second thought, review it, talk to your constituents, allow the public to have a chance to input, and that night, councillors can wade in. So we'll have time to go over it and flesh it out as well. Well, I've got you on that point, too. I know that issues like this are sometimes contentious in the public. It was a $250,000 item. There are lots of reasons why I think this was the right thing for us to do. But I think the public needs to be reminded and be aware of that just about 100% of this was funded off the tax base.
That's right.
There was a program that came down from the province that provided about $230,000 of that. So there's really no impact on the tax base to get this report. And for, as I said, a number of reasons, I think it was a good exercise for a lot of new councillors, including myself, to go through.
Well, there was a lot of things that we kind of already knew that had been on the back burner, whether it be the closure of the conservatory or Port Arthur Stadium, which was a new one, the golf courses, etc. Really, it was a great way to put this into one document to now give you a bit of a roadmap to make some decisions going into the next budget.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. And I think now that, it's back on council. So all of us individually, September, less talk, please. If I could.
Yes.
Less talk and bring forward to that meeting motions relative to the report. There's something that you want to support, draft a motion. There's something that you want to delete, draft a motion. There's something that you want to direct administration to do, draft a motion. Do not show up simply asking questions again without putting a motion on the floor. So that's what I'm hoping will occur at the meeting in September.
You did a great job, by the way, in the city council portion of the meeting last night, keeping those discussions on track, because you're right. There is a lot of discussing and not a lot of motions. And I think you set the stage last night for that going forward. So thank you for that. And making it a little bit shorter, even though it was kind of a late night.
Yeah.
Bill, listen, I appreciate your time and the clarity you've brought to a lot of this. You guys now get a little bit of a break and back together at the end of July. So hopefully you get a chance to rest a little and enjoy some time off.
Thanks for having me today, John. I appreciate it. And Thunder Bay, stay safe, stay well.
Yeah, excellent advice. Thank you so much, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
There you go. It's an interesting meeting, to say the least. And now we take a breather. Everybody just relax. 8:16. Sunshine at 23 today, 15 at Park and Water, and the Eagles are on the bay.